Yeah, myself and Ciaran work for NTI Group. We're a global technology consultancy, working across different areas of architecture, engineering, construction. So I suppose, to kind of let you know our story about CWMF, or the Capital Works Management framework that we've been involved in 4 years ago. It didn't really mean much to us. It was something our clients and architects and design teams and contractors worried about. But certainly in the last 2 years, we've been fairly deep into it in terms of implementation and configuration of systems to meet the CWMF. So there's been a lot of learning from our side, and as a result, we've taken on lots of new projects. We're working with organisations such as the Department of Education, Sport Ireland, working on the Children's Hospital, OPW as well, all in similar areas, working alongside working to the CWMF requirements. So effectively, what we've done over the last 2 years is work with these different organisations on various different projects in setting up their CDEs, effectively using the Autodesk Construction Cloud. So myself and Ciaran have been involved in a number of those projects. Myself as project manager, and then Ciaran as the technical expert who holds the greatest knowledge, certainly outside of me. So the CWMF, as some of you may be familiar with, is Capital Works Management Framework, which has certain requirements on public work contracts and public works type projects as well. So some of you will be familiar with these. And obviously being able to automate some of these requirements within inside the digital solution or within inside the CDE is beneficial to the client, the end user, the contractor, the design teams, everybody working inside that environment as well. So that's what we're going to show you today, is some of the solutions we've implemented in those different projects. The CDE that we used was Autodesk Construction Cloud on all of these projects, and that's primarily the tool that we've used across the CWMF type projects that we've been involved with. So I'm going to hand over now to Ciaran, who was the technical expert in those areas.
Thanks, Jonathan. So just want to briefly introduce myself. So I've recently joined the partner channel with Autodesk. So I was in the industry for over 10 years. So I worked with main contractors, subcontractors, and I've a range of expertise in digitization and obviously specialise in Autodesk products. So when we first looked at the CWMF for all our different clients, is basically to standardise a simplified folder structure. So instead of having these outdated kind of mandated folder structures, and to simplify that, so we're going to take a look at what a design team view looks like, and then from a client view, and then obviously from a permissions element in terms of security. So when we look at a folder structure, a very simplified folder structure, and we kind of adhere to the ISO 19650 standard, it's a simplified work, shared, published folder structure. And we're using metadata of the uploaded files to actually filter, insert, and save sets for a simplified search function in the actual projects. So that's a brief look of what we've kind of implemented across all our projects with the different clients. So from a designer point of view, so this is where the permissions come in and what they see on the platform. So they have only access to a WIP or a shared published folder, and this is where the permissions element come in with the next slide. So we can break it down to what actual access different suppliers, different contractors, different design teams, and what information can be shared, what can be published, what can be downloaded, so we can control access that way on the platform. So the next step is basically how do we upload design per stage. So I'm going to go through a kind of a basic kind of workflow to ACC, so it's using different functions on the system. And so basically we're going to go how a document is uploaded. There's a video after this to explain all this. Rename into an ISO 19650 standard, create a package, submitting the package, reviewing the document, how it gets approved, and then how the document gets moved from a shared environment from a work with environment to a shared environment. So this is just a brief video. How do I play that? Yeah, thank you. So the general user basically just uploads the files to ACC, so they're basically brought into a holding area where they adhere to a file naming standard. So if on their systems, if they have a naming standard that adheres to the system, it will automatically populate the boxes on the left-hand side. And on the right is basically just something that the system needs to provide in terms of purpose codes, acceptance codes, classification, and revision. So once all that's adhered to, the user basically press save, and then the files are uploaded to the system. So the next step is basically create a package. So the package is basically of the documents being submitted at that stage, and to basically outline that these documents have been submitted for this stage of when the CWMF. So in here, to create a package, to select the documents, and they can actually put a fixed version on it or a current version, so that basically updates the system on the platform. So in here, we just select the documents, create a review. So the review is basically set up in the background of who actually needs to review the documents. So in terms of compliance, in terms of title blocks, in terms of information, and it shows you who goes into each step. So once you've submitted, you put in the review name, unique review name, and press submit. So each step of all this is actually pre-notification by the system to the users who are actually involved in the process. So once you go into the review tab, the user who's reviewing the information can actually just either start the review or send it back to the original initiator who's actually reviewing the documents. So in the review, they're able to add comments, raise issues, which is another tool on the system. And they can also add in markups or different functions on the actual drawing that can be sent back to the initiator for updating and resubmit that document to the same review without voiding or resubmitting something back to the same review workflow. And so you can see here, you can just add in general kind of call-out boxes and text boxes just to outline what information that you're trying to capture back to the designer for information to re-upload back onto ACC. So once you close all of that can be sent back, but I just kick on to the next step. So you can go through all the documents in that and say, once you're happy with that, you basically submit it to an approver. So the approver could be the client, it could be the lead designer. They basically review the information, and if they're happy with it, that information then gets basically copied from a WIP environment folder to a shared, and where the permissions element is what people see. So again, there's different informations in here, that information containers that have to fit in. So they will basically approve, rejected, approve the comments. Again, these are just labels that the users can actually update on the system. And then we can also update the additional kind of attributes that are required from the client in terms of the acceptance codes, the revision, and the purpose codes. Sorry. So, and then we can update all this information. You don't have to do it individually. You can do it in the system. You do it very quickly. And then when it's all submitted and done, each party involved in the process gets notified that all information has now been closed and shared with the relevant people. So as you go through here, this is taking very long. So again, you can just see the code's been changed and then submitting it. So again, it notifies all people, and then I'll just highlight it that the documents then get copied from a WIP environment to a shared environment. Come on, they're going too slow for me. So if I just navigate back into the files area, and then if I navigate to the folders, you see in the WIP, you see the files, you see the naming standard, you see all the metadata, and then you also see that the review has been approved, and there's the documents living in the shared environment. So just to move quickly on, so how do you capture all of that data? We use some sort of a BI tool, just on the reporting element of it. And this is all automated in terms of reporting from ACC through a data connector element that ACC provides. So the next step we kind of looked at was how do we track risk? So as you see here, like a lot of people in the room would track risk through an Excel. So how can we digitize that? How can we standardize that within for our clients? So what we can do, we can use a tool on the system which is called issues. So the issue is basically a task that can be assigned to a user, and the user can go back and forth in terms of activity. So we can set out different custom fields to basically associate that risk. So with that risk, we can actually report on that as well. So what you see here is basically a mirror of what you see in Excel, but this is all digitally done. And it's a live document throughout the day that is updated from the data that extracted from ACC. So just to move on to the construction stage where ACC kind of fits into the CWMF. So we're looking at other kind of function on the system. So there's ACC forms, we can use them for handover, we can use it for quality, we can use it for safety. We can use site meetings for meetings. So there's the ACC meeting function on it that we can use for site meetings. There's also ACC assets. So for other clients, we're using it for commissioning elements, and we're also doing it for handover. And then we have request for information using RFIs, where the contractor is actually using the system on behalf of the client. So just to finish, how is all this data collated, and how is it actually managed at the end? So at the very end, we have this tool called Autodesk Tandem, where we can actually collate all this information for the client using all the systems within ACC, so your models, your information containers, your documentation, and it can be all linked, and it can be all reported within Autodesk Tandem. Thank you.